Hey guys, it's Thomas here with Technovision, and welcome back to another Minecraft modding tutorial video for 1.16.4. Now in this episode, we are going to be covering crafting recipes and smelting recipes, and just like in the last episode, I'm going to be splitting this up into a few sections. That way we can cover 5 unique cases where you can use crafting recipes and smelting recipes, and you can see them on screen right now. First, we are going to be covering a basic shaped recipe for our ruby block. Then we will be covering a shapeless recipe with no set shape but just the ingredients. Then we will be covering a smelting recipe, just a standard smelting recipe. Then I will be showing you how to override a vanilla recipe with your own interesting, properties. And then I will be showing you how to completely remove a vanilla recipe from the game. Alright, so let's get right into it. Now, just like loot tables, you are also, for crafting recipes, going to be making JSONs, and these are going to have to be put in a very specific package directory. So if you go over to your resources folder here in the package explorer, these crafting recipes are actually going to be in data, just like with the loot tables. So you want to open up data or data, however you say it, go to your mod ID folder, and inside of here, we should have a loot tables folder. Again, that's where all of our loot tables are. We are going to actually make a new folder in our tutorial, or whatever the name of your mod ID folder is. So we're going to right click, new directory, and this is going to be called recipes. Recipes. And again, it has to be this exact name because that is the package presentation inside of the vanilla game. So once you have this recipes folder, we can actually start adding recipes to it. So to make a new crafting recipe, what you want to do is right click in recipes, create a new file, and unlike with loot tables, you can actually name crafting recipes whatever you would like, because we are going to be setting what block or item this recipe is for inside of the code. So you can name it whatever you'd like, but I'm going to be naming mine, just for the first one, ruby block, because we are going to be making a recipe for our ruby block. So ruby_block, just like that, and then .json. There we go. And you can add a repository, and I'm naming it this just so that we know that this is a recipe for our ruby block. So this is going to be crafting the ruby block. Now, just like with loot tables, you could code this from scratch yourself if you want to, but I find that to be kind of annoying, kind of a pain. You have to memorize a lot of different things. So there is a really amazing resource in the description that you can head to right now. Again, this is in the description, and it will take you to this beautiful website where you can actually create and generate your own recipes for not only a crafting table, but a smelter, or a furnace rather, a blast furnace, campfire. Literally all of the different options are here, and you can just drag and drop whatever you would like into here to create your JSON, and you can see that it will generate here on the bottom. So we can actually just make our crafting recipe here and then just copy the JSON. And of course, we want to maybe modify a few of these options here. So one thing I want to mention before we actually jump into creating our recipe here, our crafting recipe, is that you'll notice there are obviously a bunch of vanilla items, and you can drag them as necessary. So I could drag a dirt block, for example, into the middle here. And you can see that it has actually added a dirt block into our crafting recipe. And I'll be explaining what these keys are and these patterns are once we make our first recipe. That way you actually understand what is happening in the JSON code. But first, we're just going to make the recipe. But yeah, so you can drag and drop these vanilla blocks, right? But you might be wondering, well, how do I get my my custom items and blocks into these recipes? So there are 2 options here. You can either just put a placeholder in, and you can replace the name here with your custom item later on, or you can use this awesome feature with add item up here in the top right corner. So hit add item, and you can actually add your custom item into this menu. So for example, I'm going to add our ruby item that we have in the game, and you want the ID. This is the ID, the namespace, and the item. So again, this is your mod ID, colon, and then the name of your object inside of the registries package. So in our case, ruby. If this was for ruby block, it'd be ruby_block, just like that. So yeah, so we've got our ID now, and then you can actually add a custom texture. This is just so that you can see it better. I have my ruby texture right here, so I can just use that. Hit add, and there we go. You can see your custom item is actually now in this menu. This is so cool, such a helpful resource for you guys. And you can actually drag it in, and you can see that we can now use our custom item in this crafting recipe. Now, again, you can just code this yourself by scratch, but this is such a helpful resource. And if you reload, your custom items actually stay in the menu, so you can always come back here and keep making more. So this is amazing, literally such a helpful resource. All right, so let's add our ruby, and then let's also add our custom ruby block. So let's call that ruby block. And this would be tutorial for a mod ID, colon, and then Ruby underscore block. And it looks like I didn't put a texture. Oh, there we go. We can just grab a random texture. This is our Ruby block texture and hit add. Again, this is just for show, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, so we've got our Ruby block now and our Ruby, and we can use these as necessary. So to make our first crafting recipe, for the crafting table, what we are going to be making first is a shaped recipe for to craft our Ruby block. Like I mentioned, that's why we named this Ruby block. So what I want is to just have it so that just like with an emerald block, for example, if you put 9 rubies in here, in every single slot, you will get 1 Ruby block. So let's do that. We can throw our rubies into each of these sections here to set up this crafting recipe. Here we go, and there we go. So we've set all that up, and you can see down here that it has changed a bit. So we've got our Ruby, and it's set to this key here, and we're using it here. I'm going to explain that more in a second. And then we want the output. So we're going to drag our Ruby block, and there we go. You can see 1 Ruby block. So we now have pretty much a working crafting recipe. It's all set up here, really helpful. And you can see that it says 1 here, a count of 1. You can actually change how much the count is by either editing this little like piece right here in your JSON, or you can just right click, set counts, and then we can set it to like 10, for example. And there we go, 10 Ruby blocks now. I'm gonna set this to 5 just so we can test this out. So yeah, so you'll get 5 Ruby blocks if you make this crafting recipe. You can select the Java version. Mine is 1.16 for Minecraft, rather, not the Java version, the Minecraft version. And then we're gonna mess around with these settings later, but you can also change the name if you want to download it to your computer. And then finally we have the group. Now the group you're probably not gonna use, but if you've ever used the crafting book, I believe it's called the crafting guide or the book, right in your little inventory space, you'll notice that there are some crafting recipes that show up there. You can actually group multiple crafting recipes together into the same group so that they will show up in a collection in this crafting book. So I'm gonna just add a group here just for this tutorial. I'm gonna name it just tutorial because that's the name of our mod. And then if you add this group to any other recipes, it will group them together. I guess I could also name this like Ruby. Maybe we could throw all our Ruby stuff together. But again, this is totally optional. You really don't have to do this. And I pretty much never use this group function. But just for now, I'm going to put tutorial just for fun so you can see it. And yeah, so now we have our crafting recipe completely done. And we can copy all this JSON code. Right click copy. And we can paste it into our JSON here. All right, so now that it's pasted in, I want to just sort of go over this and explain what each piece is so that if you want to make it manually, you totally can. So first we have the type, and this is the type of crafting recipe this is. So this is a shaped crafting recipe, which means that it's important the placement of your items, they have to be in a specific placement. So that's what that means. And then we have the pattern here. Now the pattern, this is actually representative of the crafting table. So you can see we have 3 rows here. This is the top row of the crafting table, this is the middle row, and this is the bottom row. And then in each row we have 3 slots, just like the 3 slots on the crafting table. I might have a little, image up on the right here so you can sort of compare them. Now, in each of these 3 slots, you can put a key that is linked to an item or block in the game. So you can see here that we have hashtags filling up all the slots. And that is because the hashtag key, as you can see down here in keys, the hashtag key is set to the item Ruby. And again, that's tutorial Ruby because that's our mod ID, colon, and then the name. So this hashtag, every time you use a hashtag in this pattern, it is going to represent using a Ruby in that slot in the crafting table. So, and that is why you can see that it's filled up in all of them, because we put rubies in all of the icons here, all of the little selection boxes. So you could actually add multiple keys, and we're going to show that in a second. Let's actually do that right now. We can actually delete all of this. Let's, instead of having all rubies, let's have a diamond in the middle. So let's grab a diamond. We can add a vanilla diamond. There we go. So now let's copy this JSON into our IntelliJ. And now you can see that we actually have a new key in the middle, because as you can see here, we've got the diamond in the middle. So we need a new key to represent the diamond. So it's actually generated a new key here called, for the letter D, and that is linked to the vanilla diamond using namespace Minecraft and then the name. So yeah, so now we've got this pattern here. Hopefully that makes sense. You can just sort of, play around with that if you would like. And then the results. So the result is essentially what this crafting recipe will result in, of course. And just like we said here, the result is a Ruby block, 5 Ruby blocks. So we have here the result item, and then the count, the amount. So you could set this to 1 if you wanted. And then finally we have the group down here. So that's pretty much all that is, all that makes up a crafting recipe in the game. Now we are actually done with this crafting recipe and it should be fully working, but I want to show you one thing before we move on from shaped recipes. And if you come over here, I just want to show you, for example, let's say we have a recipe like this that is 3 rubies and then 3 diamonds like this, and then we have the space over here. So as you can see here, in the JSON code that has been generated, instead of having 3 slots in the pattern in each bar, we actually have 2 slots. And the reason for that is because this crafting recipe is actually going to be able to translocate in 2 different spots in the crafting table. So we could have, what this is saying here, without adding this extra space for, an error block, is saying that this recipe will also work if you have this configuration as well. Like that. So both of those will work the same, and you can see that down here, nothing really changed. But if we were to, for example, let's move this back. Let's say we were to set this exactly where place option is. This will, if we check it, you can see that it added a space here to the to where the 3rd slot would be in each of these bars. And that is because when you add a space in this pattern, it actually resembles an error block. And if you delete that space, if it doesn't exist, then it actually will allow you to translocate these crafting recipes in multiple slots. That is how you have something like a hoe, for example, or an axe. Let's pretend like this is an axe. Like, let's get the ruby here. Most of you know this this crafting recipe for an axe, for example. This is how you can get a recipe like an axe to actually work like this as well, so it works in both ways. So yeah, that's what that means, but I'm going to leave this unchecked, obviously, because I don't want that for right now, but you can definitely mess around with that if you would like. Now that that's done, let's head into IntelliJ and file, save all, and we can run the game to test this out. All right, so we're inside of the game now, and if we come over to this crafting table, let's just really quickly make this recipe. It should be just like this, and there we go. It is working perfectly, and you can see the 5 ruby blocks, and there we go. All right, so now you know how to make a shaped crafting recipe, and now we are going to be moving on to a shapeless recipe. So to make a shapeless recipe, it's going to be the same process. Go over to recipes, create a new file, and this crafting recipe, I'm going to name it Shapeless Diamond. Shapeless_diamond, because this is going to be a crafting recipe to craft a diamond, and add a repository. And this is just sort of for example, but we're going to head back over to the little generator here, whatever you want to call it, simulator, and we are going to make this recipe. So if you click Shapeless here, you can see this little option right here. That will actually turn your JSON into a shapeless crafting recipe, and we can make our recipe. So shapeless means that essentially no matter what ingredients are in there, there's no set order. So as long as the ingredients are in the crafting space, they will work. And you can just sort of throw whatever you want in there. So let's make it so that if you put 3 rubies into a crafting table, you will get, in return, a single diamond. There we go. So as you can see here, we have 3 rubies, and if you look at the JSON, there is actually no order, not like the previous recipe. This one has no shaped order. All it says is that there are 3 ingredients, and that these are the ingredients. So as long as you have those ingredients in the crafting table in any order, you will get this result. And again, you can throw these in any box you want, and the JSON will stay the same. So, and you can see real quick, if we add like a vanilla block, there we go. It's adding a new item to the ingredients list. So yeah. Anyway, so we want 3 rubies in here, and now we can just copy this. Well, we need the group as well if we want to sort of stay consistent with that. So I'm gonna put tutorial. Again, you really don't have to use this feature, just sort of testing it out for you guys. And yeah, I think that is pretty much it. So let's copy all this code, and we can paste it inside of shapelessdiamond.json. And yeah, we're pretty much done with this. Again, just really quickly, you can see the type here is shapeless this time instead of shaped. We just have an ingredients list with no sort of key or any set presentation, just an ingredients list, and then the results, and you can set the count. And again, you can edit all of this yourself if you would like. So let's run the game and test it out. All right, so we're back in the game, and let's just really quickly make this recipe. So if we throw 3 diamonds in here, there we go. We have actually made our recipe, and it's working perfectly. And the shape does not matter, just like I mentioned. And actually, because it's only 3 items, I think you should actually be able to do this game mode survival style in your little crafting recipe here. Yeah, there we go. So you can see that it works in there as well. Perfect. All right, so now we're gonna move on to smelting recipes, and you can just throw these into the recipes folder. There's no special location for them. You can just name them whatever you would like as well, just like with the crafting recipes. So to make our first smelting recipe, we're just gonna right click, create a new file, again in the recipes folder, and I'm gonna name this one smelting underscore ruby underscore block. Oh, .json, forgot that .json. Let me do that really quickly one more time. Smelting underscore ruby underscore block .json, and add a repository, and I'm naming it that just because we are going to be making a smelting recipe for our ruby block, but it is going to be a smelting recipe, not a crafting recipe. So you can add keywords like that to sort of help you keep in line what JSONs are for what recipes. So once you have this new file here, we can go to our little generator here. Let me refresh. And for this smelting recipe, you want to actually select the smelting option. This is the little furnace icon. And again, you can do this with literally any of these, unique blocks here. I'm only gonna be showing smelting and crafting, but the process is exactly the same for these other ones. So for smelting, what we wanna do is throw an ingredient up here and then a result. So I'm gonna make it so that if you smelt a ruby, you will get a ruby block. So let's throw the ruby up there. Oop. There we go. And let's throw the ruby block down here. And there we go. We can set the count if you would like, all that stuff. But yeah, and you don't need to add fuel because all of that is handled by vanilla Minecraft. But yeah, so as you can see down here, we have a JSON pretty much set up, but we can actually modify a few other values. So the Minecraft version, of course, very important. Make sure it's on 1.16. You also can set the amount of experience points that you get, because in Minecraft, when you smelt something, you often get experience for it, especially ores. So if you don't want any experience, you can just set this to 0.0, but I'm gonna set this to 0.2 just so we get a little bit of experience just to test this out. And then of course, the amount of time that it takes to smelt in ticks. So this is not in seconds, this is in game ticks. And I think 200 is pretty standard for most things. So I'm gonna leave it there, but you can modify that as you would like. Then for group, you can throw in a group if you would like. I'm not going to use a group this time, but yeah, you can do that if you want. And it's pretty much done here. So let's copy this JSON, and we can go back to IntelliJ, paste it into our JSON here, and let's just run through this really quickly. So again, your type, this time it's smelting, so that it knows that this is the type of recipe it is. We've got an ingredient list, and it's just one ingredient pretty much because there's one slot in the furnace. And then of course the result. And if you wanted to add a count, you could also add a little count here. I think we could maybe edit custom data. Yeah, and you could add like a count and stuff if you would like. But that's not going to be necessary for this crafting recipe, or this smelting recipe rather. Then we've got our experience and our cook time. Great, so now that this is all set up, we can file, save all, and run the game and test this out. All right, so we're in the game, and let's go over to this little furnace here. And if we throw our rubies inside of here, as you can see, it is cooking, and it should take 200 ticks, just like we set. And here we go, moment of truth. It should be a ruby block, just like we set. And there we go. So everything is working perfectly, just like we said. All right, so that's pretty much all you need to know about general crafting recipes, but now I'm going to show you how you can mess around with vanilla crafting recipes in case you need to do some stuff with those. So if we close out of here, we can actually close up all of this all the way up to our mod ID folder instead of data. And just like with our loot tables, whenever you want to actually override or modify a Minecraft vanilla recipe, you're gonna wanna do it in the Minecraft namespace. So go over to your Minecraft folder. If you don't have one already, you can just create a folder in data called Minecraft, because that is the namespace or the mod ID of vanilla Minecraft. And then of course we have our loot tables in there. We can just create a new folder in Minecraft. And we can just call this recipes. And just like with our tutorial one, we can just fill it up with recipes, and these will, they won't always, but they can override vanilla recipes. So the way that you override a vanilla recipe is you want to, instead of recipes, new file, and again, this has to be in the Minecraft namespace. And the way you override a recipe is by creating a JSON that is the exact same name as the existing JSON recipe. So in my case, for this one, we are going to be overriding, I believe, the emerald block. So we're gonna like change up the emerald block code. So I believe it would just be emerald underscore block.json. and add a repository. So anything that we put inside of this JSON, because it is the exact same name as the one in vanilla, it will override, take precedence over the existing JSON. And you can find all of these actually if you go into external libraries here. If you open this up and go all the way down, you should be able to find Gradle net.minecraft 1.16.4. And if you open this up, this is actually the vanilla game files, and you can go over to data, Minecraft, recipes, and you can see all of the vanilla game recipes here, and you can actually copy them and check them out. But you can essentially find the one you're looking for. Like, let's find emerald, where is it? ABCDE, emerald block. So we can see that is the name. So if we want to overwrite it, we can copy the name from right here. And this is actually the vanilla one, so you can check out the vanilla one right here. But that's not going to be necessary. So let's go into our generator now that we know the name. And for this recipe, this crafting recipe, I want it to be so that you have to make an X in the crafting recipe to make a emerald block, just for testing purposes. So let's grab an emerald, and we can make that little X shape that I want, just like this. And let's set the output to an emerald block. And there we go. And we want it to be shaped, so keep this unchecked. And there we go. This is the crafting recipe done. We can copy all this JSON, paste it in. And as you can see, it is a crafting shaped recipe. This time the pattern is an X, and you can see that right here. And we've got the key hashtag that is set to emerald. Great, so this is working perfectly. And again, the reason this is going to override the existing emerald block crafting recipe, it's going to replace that recipe, is because the name is exactly the same as the vanilla one inside of the Minecraft namespace. So let's try and run the game and check this out. Okay, and we can test out this crafting recipe really quickly with an X here. Oh, there we go, a X. And as you can see, this does make the emerald block. And if we try out the original recipe from the vanilla game, you can see that it no longer works. And again, that's because we have overridden it inside of the Minecraft namespace. So we're overwriting it so that now the recipe is actually this. And yeah, it's working perfectly. All right, so the last example that I want to show you is how to actually completely remove a vanilla recipe from the game without having to replace it with one of your own like custom ones. So essentially we're just completely removing the crafting recipe from the game. And to do that, what you want to do is, again, this has to be inside of the Minecraft namespace because it is replacing Minecraft, vanilla Minecraft code, JSON code. And instead of recipes, you want to actually name your JSON, your new JSON, the exact name again as the vanilla recipe. So I'm going to be removing the coal block recipe from the game. So to do that, to find the exact name, we can go over to external libraries, head over to Minecraft 1.16.4, data, Minecraft, recipes, and let's find the coal block. So coal_block. Where is it? Coal_block. There we go. So this is the coal_block JSON. So that is the name that we need to name our JSON to overwrite it. And you actually want to copy all of the vanilla code inside of this. So it has to be exactly the same as the vanilla JSON if you want to remove it from the game. And then come back up here. We can close this up. Inside of your Minecraft recipes, inside of data, you want to create a new file. Name this coal_block.json. Again, it should be the exact same name as the vanilla one. And add a repository. And you want to paste in the exact vanilla code that you got from the external library. So paste it in. So as you can see, this is the vanilla coal block recipe for crafting the coal block. So if we just left it like this, nothing would change. It would just be the same recipe. But if we actually change the result here, if we change the result of this crafting recipe from coal block to actually the air block, then this will completely remove the recipe from the game without you having to worry about like using data packs and other sorts of stuff and mix-ins. So pretty much this will work great. All you have to do every time is just make sure you name your JSON the same as the vanilla recipe. Paste in the vanilla recipe exactly, and then change the result to air. So there we go. Now we can run the game and test this out. All right, let's head over to this crafting table here. And if we try to make a coal block just like we would in vanilla, as you can see, it no longer works. So the crafting recipe has been completely removed from the game without us having to add a new crafting recipe. So it's working perfectly and you cannot craft this block anymore. Alright, so that's going to do it for recipes. Thanks guys so much for watching. I hope you learned a lot. Hopefully you can mess around with this generator here and make some really awesome stuff with all of these different blocks. They all function pretty much the exact same way. And yeah, thanks guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next episode.